Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo.
The time has come, folks.
Yeah!
That's not me being overdramatic. That is the name of the episode.
That is what we're talking about. And boy, it's a doozy.
It is.
It's
all the best ways.
Yeah, no, this is very, it's an incredibly strong episode. It only has a 96% on the wiki and Chalk
Only
Squad.
a 96.
Let's bump that up to at least a 98.
Yeah.
It's so much.
It is.
I should preface this by saying I have been listening to so much old Odyssey recently.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I've been doing this thing.
Good comfort food.
I've been having trouble sleeping at night, and so I've been putting on like the OA Club or whatever, and I queue up 3 episodes because when I was a kid, and I would listen to them on CD when I was going to sleep. There were 3 episodes on a disc. And so I've just been listening to, like, so much old Odyssey. And, like, it's actually really interesting because I just listened to some of the episodes that are sampled in this one last night.
Nice.
Like, I listened to the one where Eugene comes to town last night.
Oh, nice. Connie Part 1.
Yeah. I fell asleep during Connie Part 2.
So funny that Eugene's first episode is named Connie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got that one on CD. It is sitting in the drawer next to me.
It's a good one. Highly recommend re-listening to it.
Yeah.
The sad thing is that I tried listening to New Odyssey, and I just did not like it nearly as much.
Also, like, you don't have the familiarity, so falling to sleep during New Odyssey doesn't work as well as
No, it
falling
doesn't at
asleep
all.
to something it's like you don't fall asleep to the new album from a band you just got into. You fall asleep to Jack Johnson doing the Curious George soundtrack.
Naturally.
And by that I mean I fall asleep to Jack Johnson doing the Curious George soundtrack.
Like every
That was
night.
my attempt at an Andrew Sabo joke. No, it's just it's one that I go back to from time to time.
It's delightful. I don't know if any of the Chalk Squad listen to Josh Garrels, but I have listened to the same Josh Garrels album like well over 100 times.
There you go. All right. So, episode 330, The Time Has Come. It's an episode written and directed by Paul McCusker, because if it wasn't, what even would life be?
Mm-hmm.
It first aired September 2nd of 1995, and it comes off the Darkness Before Dawn album that we have been talking about.
So
it is. I'm going to cut you off just for a moment.
Yeah, go for it.
It is also, and I really want to highlight this in this episode because of just the gravity and everything of this episode, but also like one of the reasons I love it. So this episode is sound engineered by Dave Arnold with music by John Campbell. That's almost always the case, but it really feels necessary to emphasize it here because, without
it's really
that,
good.
I don't know what this episode would be.
Certainly wouldn't be the same.
There's a really good write-up in the official guide. Complete Guide's the old one. The official guide, just with Dave Arnold talking about taking 2 weeks to put together the Imagination Station scene.
Yeah.
Going through all the scripts, just trying to find these key points in Eugene's journey and whittling that down to about 40 minutes of audio, which he then whittled down even further into 8 glorious minutes.
Yeah.
Then working with John Campbell to put music to that. And the love and effort put into crafting this was so good. All of that montage scenes plus the recycled wit lines all come together in a way that is perfect, and we'll obviously talk about that. But I just wanted to, off the top, throw some credit at Dave Arnold and at John Campbell, because we usually are just like, yeah, it was written and directed by whomever, and we kind of move on. But
no, this is. This is.
I think pointing out
a work
the rest
of art
is, yeah. Anyways, you were gonna say something before I decided to monologue?
Yeah, I'm sure I was, but to be honest with you, I completely forget.
Okay, well that's fine. Cast wise, I mean, we've got nothing this episode.
Yeah.
It is Connie, Bernard, Eugene, Jack, Tom at the end, and then archive footage from throughout the show.
Yeah.
But it is so, yeah, it's very much kind of restricted to the most key of Odyssey characters.
Yeah, so basically, I think off the top, it's worth saying that this is the episode where Eugene becomes a Christian. Right?
Yes, yeah. If for some reason you're not listening along to this with us, or like you've forgotten, yeah, the reason we're being all serious
is because this episode is a giant clip show that ends with him becoming a Christian.
Yeah.
And it's very powerful. Like, I mean, yeah, there's Eugene's journey is basically like feeling super helpless, feeling like so much of his identity and so much of his his self-worth has been stripped away because Wit's gone and darkness seems to be winning and things are so bad right now, and he just feels so incredibly helpless. He doesn't even have Wit's End anymore. Although he kind of does, because he can be on the site, but he doesn't have it by any means in the same way that he had it before. And so he kind of goes searching within himself for answers.
Yeah.
And it's so good. Like, all the decisions that you've been making have led you to this point, to this decision.
Right. Yep. And yeah, it is it's an episode with a lot of weight. And yeah, we'll kind of break down what that looks like as we proceed, but
yeah.
I think I'll roll the promo if you're cool with that.
Yeah, I think that's what I would like.
Life-changing excitement on the next adventure in Odyssey. Feeling left out and left alone, Eugene Meltzner has hit rock bottom. With the closing of Wit's End, his life has ended. Or has it? Facing the greatest decision in life, will Eugene forever wander lost or discover a new path to freedom? Make your decision next time on Adventures in Odyssey.
Look, it's not an egregious promo, but the promo doesn't get it.
No, it doesn't.
I almost, like, the promo makes, this one especially, makes me feel even more than, like, other ones we've talked about that are bad. Like, do they hire an outside firm to make these promos?
They must, because clearly they don't get the vibe.
Yeah, it's tough. But, whatever. It sets the stage. It doesn't give everything away.
Yeah.
It exists.
It does exist. We cannot deny that. So basically, the episode begins with a callback to basically Eugene sitting alone in Wit's End, and it's a callback to him first coming to Wit's End.
Yeah. Well, so it starts on a cold open.
Yeah.
We don't get the Odyssey theme save for 7 notes that Eugene whistles.
Mm-hmm.
Which is awesome. And also, is not Eugene doing the whistling. That's our good friend Dave Arnold, engineering the show and doing the whistling. They didn't call Will Ryan in for that. Who knows? Maybe Will Ryan can't even whistle. I can't.
I can't well.
And so I love it as a way to open and just to be like, yeah, we're not doing, like, we just said the promo doesn't really get the tone. The episode gets the tone and is like, yeah, we don't need to cut to full-blown theme song Adventures in Odyssey is happening.
No.
We
cut to sad feelings.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. There's a couple different points in which I really felt this, but this is an episode that, while I have listened to, is not like embroidered into my mind.
Yeah.
Especially not in the way that are the other kind of Eugene arc that we covered, being the Eugene Returns 3-parter. That one is one I had on CD, and so I know it extremely well. And those episodes are very clearly calling back to this, because we do have the Imagination Station as a center point. All of the clip showiness of parts of it, and the whole thing with, you know, Eugene coming out of the Imagination Station and remembering this episode rather than like that's his first getting his memories back, is remembering this episode.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's so powerful as well. But what really caught me in this is the cold open to this of Eugene, like, getting his keys out, unlocking the door to Wits End, walking into Wits End, going to the Imagination Station, and just thinking about things. It has a very, like, the idea of starting the episode without really having dialogue right off the bat, and it's just kind of cold open right onto sound effects, is the same thing that A Most Intriguing Question does, which is the first of that Eugene Returns trilogy, with the guy who works for the health association or whatever showing up, and he's like parked outside of Wits End, and we get that same thing of like him turning off his car, like you hear the keys, like it's very, I don't know, it's a very similar vibe, and just like the starting on, it's not like, so there's a term in like story writing and whatnot, which is in media res, which means like starting on action, like throwing you right into the thick of it.
Yeah.
And this is a different play on that, which is like throwing you right into a quiet moment of contemplation that then, like, the story doesn't take a break. Like you're being thrown in at the start of the story, but you're not like. But
the story doesn't begin with action, because the story isn't based around action. The story is based about self-reflection and kind of like an inward understanding and a coming to terms with.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting that this episode comes amidst like the Blackgaard episodes, amidst the Darkness Before Dawn album.
Yeah, no, it's completely off pace from everything we've been covering. It's been action, movement, plot, and then this episode that just opens with kind of desolation. Like, I would argue that it, like, the point that it makes so abundantly clear is that Eugene is alone.
Yeah, and like, so on top of that, this has not been a Eugene heavy arc up to this point. The last episode we saw him in was 327 Moving Targets.
Yeah.
So it's been 3 episodes since he's been here, and before that we didn't hear him, and like before, that's the only time he shows up onto this album up until this point. Previously he was in part 2 of A Name Not a Number, but like he has not been in the show much, and even when he is, he's very much on the back burner.
Yeah.
And so it's such an interesting move for the show to be like, all right, we're taking a step aside from all this action to, create maybe our most important episode of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And like it almost does like a full arc for, like, it's not like this is building off the last couple Eugene episodes. It's building off of a grander arc for Eugene, this big trajectory that we've seen and that we get recapped. And in the last episode he was in Moving Targets, he was talking about this kind of like, it was the whole growing the mustache and not knowing what to do since Katrina has left. And he's got his, he's been reading her Bible, or the Bible she gave him. And like, so it's not as though this is coming out of nowhere.
No.
But it's also not as though this is the climax of like a multiple episode build.
No, it's the culmination of his back burner contemplative journey that has been going on alongside everything that we've been covering.
Right. It is the culmination of nearly 7 years of Eugene being on the show.
Yeah.
And like, so this episode starts after he walks in, like you said. We get a clip from him first arriving at Wit's End in Connie Part 1. And his interaction with Wit in that. And it's just Eugene, in this very pensive state, remembering that moment. And it's such a great note to start on. And it is, I think, we haven't talked too much about kind of Eugene's overall arc in this show, because we haven't talked about Eugene too much, but it's really worth pointing out. So he first appears in Connie Part 1. Connie Part 2 is the Connie becomes a Christian episode. Mm-hmm. Which was a huge, like, that was kind of the first 3 albums.
Yeah.
Were all kind of playing, almost like the first, year or two of the show. However, that susses out, because there's a lot of episodes that get cut during that time, and there's some pilot stuff and whatever. But like, Connie's early thing is this whole story arc, and that at least her, going from not a Christian to a Christian, that whole arc takes place and ends right as Eugene comes onto the scene, in a move of the show clearly being like, all right, like, we did one salvation story, now let's do another. But also, whereas the Connie one took place over a year of the show, this one's gonna take 7.
Yeah, no, it's an incredibly, it's super powerful, and you, like you said, we really haven't covered a ton of Eugene, but it's a very long arc, and like I said, because I've been listening to so much old Odyssey, I've seen a lot of the parallels between there. I was like, Connie was super despondent for a really long time towards the faith, and like, she was obviously very young and coming at it from a kind of classic young and I don't really care about God because I don't need him perspective, whereas right. Eugene approached it from a I'm young and I'm intelligent, and as a man who's a background of science and things like that, embracing something so potentially contrary to it is it's a big difference, and it's a big journey. That's one of the reasons I really wanted to cover the Mortal Coil episodes at some point, just because I think Odyssey's commentary about a faith journey is very important, and I think it's worth discussing. It's very interesting because salvation is such a key component to Christianity, right? You're not a Christian until you're saved. And what does it mean to be saved, and what does it take to become saved, and can you lose your salvation and all that? I mean, those are the key questions that churches and scholars have been debating for thousands of years. You know, I mean, yeah, you can hear different things from anybody to kind of defend certain arguments. And I really, as somebody who, like, you know, doesn't even necessarily, I don't know if I don't necessarily subscribe to the whole, like, you have to audibly pray a prayer to become a Christian. Like, I don't know if I even necessarily agree with that, but I also think that this is a super powerful illustration of what it looks like on the inside to make that journey that then culminates in that, you know? It's less about the words that are said at the end and a lot more about the, okay, there is something clearly here, and this is something that I've been drawn to, and sometimes you just, when it's all stripped away, when it's all stripped back, sometimes it takes that to get that moment of clarity to be like, this is really what I need to do. And I think that I would say Christians still do that. I think that I would say that's a continuous part of my Christian walk is, you know, times in which I'm not close to God, or more often than not times when I'm distracted by other things.
Yeah. Well, and the episode hits home, like, understands that the prayer is not what's important here as well.
Yeah.
Because they cut away on it.
Yeah.
There's almost a feeling of, like, to stay on the to stay in that moment with Eugene and listen to the whole thing, and the conclusion is almost like exploitative in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, whereas, like, I think we get a similar thing on the other big story like this that we've covered, being Aubrey.
Mm-hmm.
Where in a very similar fashion, they pull away after that scene starts, because it's like, we are setting this up, we are showing what's happening, we want to capture the tone, but it's, like, weirdly voyeuristic for us to sit here and listen to this person, you know, quote unquote say the prayer.
Yeah, no, like, I think that's actually, like, surprisingly very good from them, and I think it's also even, like, a tool of evangelism, in the sense that it's like, if you weren't a Christian and you were listening to this and you were following them on that journey, you would definitely have questions about what then happens next.
Right. Like, I think it's so good in contrast to, like, you know, Bible Man, which, as a thing I enjoyed as a child, but, like, that show was like, all right, we are going to give you an episode that is like an action show and has a little bit of, like, Christianity sprinkled in, and then at the end there is an altar call and a dude in a chrome suit leads you in a prayer that will save you. And Odyssey is coming from it and being like, no, like, we've got here's the show, we are watching this develop over time, and we're not going to bail out when the time arises, but we're going to treat it with respect and restraint. And then our Chris wrap-up can be like, look, talk to someone you know about this.
Mm-hmm.
If you felt, you know, drawn in by these events, like, absolutely go talk to someone. But the point is not, you enjoyed this? Well, now sign up.
Yeah. No, I think that's one of those things that I really like about this episode, is kind of how vague it can be at times.
Yeah.
So
we have the clip.
Yeah.
From Connie Part 1, and Eugene's thinking about that, and tinkering, and then we get a call from Whit on the answering machine.
Yeah.
While Eugene struggles to get to the phone, of just some really, really well pieced together archive footage of Whit, of Hal Smith as Whit, talking about, basically just saying, like, hello, like, are you guys there? And, I'm in Jerusalem. All right, no one's picking up. I'll call you later. Just like, I had a quick moment to talk on the phone, and I'm gonna use it.
Yeah, no, it's a genuinely good Whit moment. And Eugene kind of fumbles around, tries to get to the phone, he can't do it. And it's very interesting because, like, Eugene is desperate in this moment to get in contact with Whit.
Yeah, it seems like this moment on top of all else, like, but this is the moment that sets forth the episode.
Yeah.
Things have been building to this point, but Eugene personally hasn't gotten there until he misses the call from Whit.
Yep. So then from there, is that when Jack comes in?
Well, so we get like a nice instrumental interlude, kind of like where you think the theme song would be. And when we come back, Eugene is over at Whit's house with Jack. Jack's getting them tea. There's like a thunderstorm going on, and Jack's kind of trying to figure out why Eugene's there.
Yeah.
And there's this kind of discussion where that's kind of recapping and getting us all in the headspace of where Eugene is, but Jack's talking about the failure of the mustache.
Yeah. Even the
Eugene,
the three was it the three hairs you call a mustache or drooping or something like that.
Yeah, well that's a Bernard.
Yeah, that's
line
Bernard later.
On. Yeah. But Eugene also explains that, Whit's End has been shut down by Glossman, but that Jason has negotiated for the employees to be allowed at Whit's End. That he has been back there and he's working on this imagination station program. Basically, the idea is that he's trying to figure out what's going on at Whit's End with the tunnel and why Glossman might be there and just all of this stuff that's been ramping up, them not owning the land, like all of these questions he has. And he's like, all right, Whit has essentially encased the imagination station with all of human knowledge.
Yeah.
Like it is like, he imported all of Wikipedia into the imagination station before Wikipedia existed.
Yeah, no, it's a vast wealth of knowledge about anything and everything, both personal and otherwise. And
and he compares it to like a full library.
Yeah.
So basically, Eugene's idea is, well, what if rather than using this as a tool to like teach kids about history, I use it as a tool to research things about Whit's End in a more interactive way than what I could do. And so we can get into it later, but he basically like hooks up a search engine to the imagination station where he can like put in a keyword and see a bunch of things related to that keyword. And so his goal is to use this to figure out what's going on with Whit's End.
Yeah.
And yeah, Jack's kind of sort of following along with this whole thing, but there's definitely some confusion there. But he eventually is just kind of like, I feel like there's another reason you're here though, Eugene. Like what you're not just here to tell me all this.
Yeah.
And Eugene's like, yeah, well, missing that call from Whit this morning really kind of like threw me, and just everything has been swelling to this point. The just feeling the Whit's End being shut down combined with Whit leaving and Katrina leaving and just all of the craziness and intrigue around Odyssey. You know, he feels like these key people have been yanked out of his life in a time where he really needs to lean on them. And it is just, he's just got this feeling of powerlessness. His quote is that he feels weak and ineffective.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that I really relate to, in the sense that I feel like there have been times in my life where I felt like I've gone through a great amount of loss, like all at once, and like even I've lost things that would normally be my support system, you know? And and it does, I mean, that does push you to your core, in the sense that it's like, I literally cannot look to anybody else but God at this point, you know?
Yeah.
For me, it was my friends going to college and things not going great in my relationship, and being in college myself, and working too, and just being so exhausted and so spent that I just was, I mean, it drove me to the point where I was like, God, you're the only way that this is going to keep happening, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I have been in that place as well, actually. There were more things, you know, that were involved in this than just this, but like for me as well, that year of like, oh, I'm out of high school and the people who I normally lean on have all gone away to college and I did not, and throw in a couple other things to the mix, and it really became okay, like I have to fully lean on God in this. And so this episode gets to the core of that. And I also think that the feeling of just powerlessness while the world goes crazy around you is something we can probably all relate to at this moment in time, if you're listening to this when this comes out, because there is a lot going on around us, and
90% of
we are
it
not
not
in
good.
control. There's so much happening right now, and so that struck a chord with me as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot. I mean, obviously, this, if the Chalk Squad can't tell, I mean, this is a very emotional episode, a very emotional episode in general, but it's topical because of the feeling of helplessness and lack of control, and also just kind of reflective of our own journeys with Christ, which isn't something that we really talk about a ton on this show, but I think that this episode is probably as good a time as any, you know?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
So then,
but yeah,
moving forward, so he's with, Eugene's with Jack still, right?
Yeah.
And they're talking about, so Eugene's talking about how helpless he's feeling, and Jack's like, well, you are helpless. Like, you can't do anything. There's a physical battle, yes, but there's a spiritual battle as well, and you are not equipped to fight it because you are not aware of its existence.
Yeah. It is a really... Yeah. It's just... Jack is so direct, but just in a way that...
It's not condescending. It's just
correct.
matter of fact.
I was going to say... That's exactly it. Is he's not being direct in a way that is mean.
No.
He's being direct in a way that honestly just shows how much he cares.
Exactly.
And he's just like, you're not equipped for a spiritual battle. The only way to fight is faith.
Yeah.
Like that's all we have in this situation, and you do not have that. He then drops this, just like, it's a perfectly matter-of-fact, to-the-point line. Just stop messing around and get yourself right with God.
Yeah.
It's just Jack kind of just giving Eugene the shove to figure this out.
Yeah. Well, and even if it's something that he doesn't even fully understand, it's not even a decision that he probably was even contemplating. I mean, no, I'm sure he was contemplating it, but like the fact that there is a spiritual battle, like that is what you do. Like, if you can't fight it physically, you fight it spiritually. If you can't be there for somebody in person, you be there for them in spirit, you know?
Yeah.
And so this kind of sends Eugene, back to Wit's End to work on the imagination station.
Yeah, and he's walking down the street, just once again thinking back to a previous conversation with Wit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get our probably the lightest point in the episode, which is this interaction between Eugene and Bernard.
Which is delightful. I love Bernard. Bernard is like a fresh mint leaf in a glass of ice water. Like, it is just, I love it.
Yeah, and so Eugene's kind of walking down the street. Bernard's washing the windows at Wit's End. And Eugene's kind of like, Wit's End is closed. And Bernard's like, yeah, well, the windows still need washing. But you get this sense from Dave Madden's performance that, like, he's not there to wash the windows.
No.
Like, he's there because he also is in thought.
He's there to mourn.
Right, exactly. And I think that's some, like, fantastic nuance to that performance where it's like, oh, this doesn't just feel like
matter of fact.
I'm just, because he could absolutely have been played as, Eugene's saying, the Wit's End's closed, and Bernard's saying, well, the windows still need washing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, and some of this has to be McCusker's direction as well, but just that performance of like, yeah, well, the windows aren't going to wash themselves. Like, it's not this jokey comment. It is like I just kind of felt like I've got to be here. Because, what else can I do? You get kind of that sense of like Bernard also is helpless and doesn't know what to do, but, so he's just turning back to what he's always done. All that from a little line.
Yeah. No, but I mean that's exactly what this show is doing. Is it's performing great amounts of exposition with minimal dialogue.
And so, yeah, there's this interaction then where Bernard's like, look, what's up with you? Mm-hmm. You look about as happy as a man who invested $1 million in 8-track tapes.
Yeah.
And it's...
How does Eugene not know what 8-track tapes are? That's my question.
Yeah, that did seem weird, but, whatever.
Young people.
Yeah. It's a good moment for them to have this back and forth, and like Bernard's like, well, like Eugene's like, oh, I'm working on this thing with the imagination street. Like, he starts to say like why he's actually down, and then he pivots, and you get this sense that like it's twofold here, where like he's still not sure about saying it out loud, but also Bernard is at such a tonal juxtaposition in this scene of like he's still being Bernard while Eugene is like rethinking his life, and Bernard is kind of making the 8-track tape joke and kind of poking him a little bit in their normal banter way, and that seems to put Eugene in a place where he's like, all right, like, I'm going to conceal my feelings a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe I could have... He starts, and then he changes directions. And it's like this maybe maybe I could have told Bernard what's going on, but I can't quite get there because I'm not sure where I'm at, and I'm not sure how to communicate with him when he's joking.
No, and that's a very, that's a very real feeling to have, and it makes a lot of sense. And I think that one of the things that this episode does super well is it, through the flashbacks and everything, it draws the audience to Eugene's super strong connections with all of these other characters. So, like, even, like, the homage, like, he's talking about, like, you know, going to find himself, and he's like, well, no, we did that. Like, we drove across the country. Don't you remember that arc? Like, don't you remember getting thrown in jail? And don't you remember, like, all those other things that you did? Like, it's establishing connection, obviously, with Jack so far, and Whit by missing the phone call, and now Bernard.
Right. Yeah, it's... And Bernard's has this moment where he's like, no, like, after Eugene's like, you know, I'm just caught up in thought working on this imagination station thing. And Bernard's like, well, like, I know you, Eugene. When you're working on a program, you're walking down the street, you know, pep in your step with a smug look on your face. Mm-hmm. This isn't that. And it's so good for Bernard to just be like, you know, we've been through a lot. Don't you think I know who you are?
Exactly.
Like, even if you're not willing to come forward and talk about it, like,
don't lie to me.
It is not lost on me that you're going through something.
I feel that I've had that conversation so many times with so many people in my life where it's just like, you don't need to tell me what's going on, but don't tell me it's normal because I know it's not. Yeah, absolutely. And then we go from there. We go from there to Eugene at the imagination station. And he is importing his journal entries, years 1 through 6, into the imagination station. I find it humorous, at least, that year 1 of Eugene's diaries is the first year in Odyssey. Like, I just think that that's funny. Naturally.
He was like, oh!
New town, time to take up journaling.
Right, but it's not even really new town, because, like, year 1 is he meets Whit.
Yeah.
Because he went to Campbell County Community College.
Campbell University. Like,
he's already in the area.
Yeah.
And so it's not as though he's just, like, moving to a new place and starting a journal. It's like, he walked into the door of Whit's End, and then that night was like, all right, journal year 1.
Yep.
Because this episode takes place 7 years after Connie Part 1, so he's in his 7th year, so this is the previous journals. But yeah, and then as he's working on that, Connie comes over from the little theater and is like, oh, I didn't realize you were here, Eugene, kind of what are you doing? And she can also tell that he's distraught.
Yeah.
And she's like, you know, what's going on? He's like, I'm looking for answers. She's like, answers to what? He's like, to questions. I love that exchange.
No, that's a fat mood, though.
Of like, right,
I have questions.
Yeah. And
Dylan can attest to that. I say that pretty regularly. I don't have answers, just more questions.
Just more questions. Eugene then explains to Connie what he's going to do. Mm-hmm. So kind of expanding on this idea that he talked to Jack about. He brought up, like, in this whole thing of, like, I'm going to dive back into the imagination station and pull, you know, some information about Whit's End through doing that. He also talks about, like, you know, in order to properly test this, I have to go and examine something that I already know well to know if this is truly working.
Yep.
And so that, combined with the soul searching he's doing, kind of pushes him to, in, once again, similar to the Eugene Returns stuff, arc of just like, I'm going to test this out on myself. Like, you know, I've got to prove that what I'm doing works, and I'm reached this moment of desperation. So like, we're just going to take really aggressive measures. And he's just kind of like, Connie's like, you know, are you sure you're going to do this? Like, what's going on? You don't seem like you're in a great place. And he's just kind of like, go talk to Jack. I'm doing this. Mm-hmm. And like closes himself off in the machine.
And is that when the clip show starts?
Kind of. It is when the clip show starts, but I think in an incredible moment, the show doesn't immediately start with this going back through the history of Eugene's arcs. It starts right off the bat with the voice of Wit speaking directly to Eugene in this moment. Mm-hmm. Which is not something that, you know, I would think on paper could be pulled off.
No, but it was.
But it's Eugene, answer me.
Yeah.
Are you all right? Mm-hmm. Eugene, are you in here? Your whole future is at stake here. Push the red button. Hold on tight.
Yeah. It's so...
And it is...
push the red button. Hold on tight. Like, oh my gosh. It's so powerful. Like, it's mirroring his desperation to find answers with Wit's desperation to show him the answers, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
And it's so powerful, because, like, as much as we joke about Wit being God, like, that is God right there. Like, right. You want peace, God wants to give you peace. You want answers, God wants to give you answers. Maybe not right away, but he will do it.
It is a, like, it doesn't, right, it's not Wit calling out to Eugene. Like, it does truly feel like this is, you know, God via the Holy Spirit, or however you take it. Maybe it is him directly manipulating the imagination station, but at least the vibe is, you know, because I think both because Wit has served as a father figure to Eugene, and also, you know, God is our father.
Yeah.
Like, it forces a really, really, impactful scene here. And man, do I love it.
It's all so good, man. It's just, this whole episode is just one giant punch, and it feels good and bad at the same time, but I mean, the ending, it's just so sweet.
Yeah, it really is. It is such a perfect conclusion to what we have been building.
Yeah.
And I think, so there's not a ton I feel like we can talk through during the montage portion of this.
The only thing that I would say is basically the montage covers Eugene's history and Eugene's relationships with a lot of different people. So it covers his relationship with Connie, it covers his relationship with Katrina, especially with Katrina. Katrina is important specifically in the sense that she has been a big catalyst to his faith, in the sense that she gave him a Bible. She wouldn't be with him because he wasn't a Christian, and she was. Right. And it was kind of an inevitable thing where it was like she wasn't at first, and then she became one. You know, like, there was a sense in which God took Katrina away from him.
Right. There's this, we get, you know, from him first showing up in Odyssey, we get, you know, we get Mortal Coil stuff, we get his introduction to Tom, we get a lot of this Katrina arc, which is really the big catalyst for what's happening here in, like, at least recent Odyssey, which is, like, they become friends, they start to get close, she comes to wit's end, and you even hear the clip in there of just, like, you know, of Eugene expressing concern to Wit, of, like, I don't know how I feel about her hanging around you people, because you have a certain way about you. And Wit's like, you know, you mean our faith? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, are you worried that she will become cynical to it? And he's like, yes, maybe. And then Wit's like, are you worried that, like, she's going to believe? And then we keep jumping forward, and she does. And we get him, you know, leaving the, you know, her leaving and giving him the Bible. And we get clips of Eugene and Bernard traversing the country on his soul-finding journey, part 1. And just all of this incredibly, like, they pull all of these moments from all of these episodes that are already to a degree impactful in their episodes, but seeing them all here strung together is so much more so.
Yeah.
There has never and probably can never be a clip show this good.
No, I mean, I certainly haven't seen one.
Like,
with the exception of maybe the series finale of Scrubs.
All right, Andrew.
Sorry.
But, like, no, that's totally fine. It's just, like, normally clip shows, to me, while they can be enjoyable, they always feel just kind of like cheap, cashing in on nostalgia. Oh, remember when our show was good, all the fun times we've had together. Think back on that, rather than, like, let's do something new. And this is like, okay, yeah, like, we're gonna make you think back on all these good times, but it is to further the story.
Yeah, I think it's one of the few instances in which a clip show can be used to further the plot rather than stall it.
Right. And it only can work because the show's been going on for 7 years. Because, inevitably, there are people listening to this episode who don't have all those years of context.
Exactly.
There are people listening to this episode who, because, you know, 7 years. You grow up a lot in 7 years. If you started listening to this show at 5 and you're now 12, maybe you're still on board. But if you started at 12, you haven't heard this far. Or, like, you know, if you're 5, like, and that whole thing of, like, especially too, of, like, you know, if you don't have access to the albums and you're just listening on the radio, then when you miss an episode, like, you don't get that.
Yeah.
And so it serves such this important role of, like, fully contextualizing what's taking place. Because in the scope of this album, what is happening seems drastic. And, like, it's just all of a sudden happening. But in the context of Odyssey, this has been so intricately woven in.
For so long.
Not day 1, but, like, year 1.
Yeah.
Like, album 3 of the show starts this arc, and album 25 is where it has its climactic moment.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's character development at its finest.
And all of this happening wrecked me.
Yeah.
Like, the closest I have come to crying to an Adventures in Odyssey episode. I was so emotionally affected by this whole thing. And
was that because did you relate to it, or was it just you were empathizing so deeply that you were, like, kind of journeying through this with him?
There is definitely, I mean, all of the above. Like, it is, while my story is very different from Eugene's, I understand the emotional beats of his and can relate to a lot of them individually.
Exactly.
And that coupled with and also feeling like I feel like regardless of where people are with their faith, you have had that moment of, I am crying out to God because I cannot do this on my own anymore.
Yep.
Like that is the turning point in a Christian story.
I would say
like
that, yeah.
That is such a important part of my story, and I imagine the stories of most.
Yeah.
And so seeing it fully captured here in a way that doesn't feel overly dramatic is so important. And there's also just that level of I've spent a lot of time with the character of Eugene. I have also followed him on this whole journey multiple times.
Yeah.
And this is, so it's impacting me in that way as well, where I'm not just going, this relates to my own experience, but I'm also going, this is such an important moment for a character that I truly I feel like I understand.
Yeah. Well, I think that art becomes the most impactful when we start to see ourselves in it, there are songs that I like a lot, and then I listen to the lyrics and I love them, and then I listen to the song for the first time after a while and I'm like, oh my gosh, this song became true. This song became real to me. I always loved this song, and now I get the words, and now it has that even deeper meaning. And I think that's exactly what this episode at least did for me, is just I get it. I totally get his feeling of desperation and this sense of I think that loss viewed separately from somebody dying is not given enough credit, because loss of any kind breeds grieving, and the grieving process. We think okay, somebody dies, then you go through the 7 stages of grief. No.
Right.
You don't see your friend because he's in college, 7 stages of grief. You have a falling out with your parents, 7 stages of grief. These things happen whenever you are experiencing this loss, and it's really how you respond to it and how you observe it that changes what you do in response to it.
Right.
My therapist put it really
moves
well.
Away.
Yeah.
Your girlfriend decides that you're on a break, and the place of your employment has been shut down. Grief. Yeah.
So my therapist put this really great when I was going through this. She said there are things, it's like a garden in the sense that you have these plants, right? You have these strong plants that are growing, they're their own things individually, and they represent your relationships. And when you lose those plants, you can't, they're gone, the plant's dead, it's not going to be alive anymore, it's not going to be putting out any more fruit, it's not going to be serving its purpose. So what do? And the answer is, obviously, you plant more. You plant more seeds, and you try and make something that will grow, that will take its place, and not necessarily erase it, but start to fill that void, metaphorical garden space in which it once was. And kind of having that be said to me was so powerful, because it's super hard, and that's exactly what Eugene's experiencing here. he lost a giant plant, which is wit, and he lost a giant plant, which is wit's end. He lost a slightly smaller but still incredibly important plant in Katrina. And so he's left with now what? He has these super strong relationships that he has kind of unknowingly developed over all these years. And so now he's left being like, well, now what do I do? And Jack is kind of the person that tells him, well, you need to start planning. And so he goes in the imagination station and has this long introspection that leads to him deciding, I'm planting a seed of faith.
Yeah.
Metaphors with Andrew.
Yeah. And so it all kind of climaxes, this whole experience washes over Eugene, and at the end he's just kind of crying out like, yes.
Yeah. Like, what do?
Yes.
You say yes. Say yes to believing. Say yes to God. Say yes. Yeah. Say yes to the question of, is God real? And do you want him?
And so he does, and he steps out, and Jack's there,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, how are you here? Like, what happened? And Jack's kind of just like, I talked to Connie, and she said to come, and now I can't find her, but what's going on, Eugene? And there is this incredible just monologue from Eugene of him. It's just him expressing his inner thoughts out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And he is slightly manic, and he is rambling through these things, trying to justify his experience, bargaining, like all of this just kind of like, I don't, how can I give up on what I have held true for all these years, to embrace a faith, but like I feel like I have to, and like how could I not? And it's so well written,
Mm-hmm.
so well performed. It rang true to the character of Eugene, and also was something which felt like a mirror reflecting back on my own life.
Exactly. There's like, especially I think, Chalk Squad listeners that have kind of similar experiences as we do growing up in the church, and even if you didn't feel God super strongly in your own life, you've been able to hopefully bear witness to him for so long and see what he's doing that it's like, how can you even deny that he's there? How can you turn your back on somebody that's shown himself so clearly? And the whole theme of this episode is that all of this has been building to a decision. You have been walking a walk for a long time, and now there is a fork in the road, and you need to decide whether you are going to say yes or you are going to say no. And Eugene says yes. And Eugene, obviously, like you said, like has this whole, questioning of like, well, can I do this? Can I really do this? Like, but then he kind of becomes self-aware, and he's like, well, I need to do this before I talk myself out of it, because I will over-rationalize and philosophize and just kind of chalk it up to being anything less than a call from God.
Right. And I absolutely get that sentiment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I live my life walking on the on the verge of, Andrew, you need to think less and do more, and most of the time it gets me in trouble, but in faith situations it definitely helps.
Yeah. Whereas I am the person who thinks through every little thing and is easy to talk myself out of decisions and all of that stuff, which it's a nice balance that we bring to things.
Yeah. You see, my thing is, I'm really easy to get talked into doing stuff.
Yeah, not I. Which is why this podcast was my idea, and Andrew got drug along for the ride.
Hey!
43 along for the ride. Is that the levity you wanted in the middle of this episode?
Sure.
I'm sorry, Chalk Squad.
No, we should... I like the mental image of me riding in the sidecar With you on the motorcycle.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he kind of just asks Jack, like, you know, how can I do this? And Jack's, like, weirdly hesitant.
Yeah.
And, like, is, like, trying to figure out what's going on. And, like, and he's like, you know, he mentions once again kind of having a dream about all this. And then he's like, all right, well, like, what, you know, well, okay, let's do this. Like, something doesn't quite feel right, but, like, you're right. We gotta do this. And then Connie walks in.
Mm-hmm.
And Katie Lee gives maybe the best performance ever.
Yeah, no,
like,
it's such a good...
It perfectly encapsulates her conversation with, or her relationship with Eugene. Faster than any of the other characters who stumble in, she understands and changes her posture.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, yeah, it's this thing of Eugene has been around for as long as Connie has been a Christian. They both work at Wit's End with Wit. Like, they have such a strong relationship. She has watched him grow. She has watched his relationship with Katrina. And she realizes this is the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's actually happening here. And yeah. Oh, it's so good. And so they're getting ready to pray again. And then Bernard walks in. Just with this, once again, it's Dave Madden being so true to the character of Bernard. He is walking this line between comedy and raw emotion. And he's just like, you know, yeah, he has like a classic Bernard, well, stuff me with feathers and call me a pillow.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time is like, well, this is incredible, and I am so glad to be here for this. And then the final cameo, Tom shows up.
Yeah. And he was just driving by, and he felt like he should come in.
Yep. And so we get all the key people. Tom is once again comes at it from like a somewhat I don't know. He's a little bit more comedic than Connie was. Not
well, it's very much it's kind of the sitcom ending where it's like it built to this very serious conclusion, and then it's just like interrupted by yokels, you know, like
right, and they're all like, "Hi, hi, Tom." Like, what? Like, well,
and he's like, "I would like to do this if anybody else is gonna join."
Kind of solve this.
And then they're like, "Well, one person is missing, and that's Wit, but you know, he's obviously not here."
And that hits hard, just like that. Like, it feels like a moment of the show, not just being like Wit's not here, but also being like Hal didn't get to be here for this.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, yeah, it's such a, yeah, for Eugene just to be like, well, we're missing one person. And then I believe Tom says, you know, I think in a way he is here, or something along those lines. No, I wish I had the exact quote, but basically, like, you know, his presence is still felt. And yeah, Eugene launches into his prayer in, you know, typical Eugene fashion, and Jack kind of calls him back and is like, all right, like, maybe start it with you know, dear Father, rather than, you know, doing your normal shtick.
Yeah.
And I like that then it's not as though Eugene's prayer suddenly becomes casual.
Mm-mm.
And he switches into sounding like a normal person. He dials it down, but he stays true to his character.
Yeah, it becomes less of a performance.
Correct. But it doesn't feel like... Right. Because it could be, okay, stop performing, and he just turns it off, and then that feels like a performance.
Yeah.
But they managed to hit the perfect medium where he can say a line like, I am uncharacteristically at a loss of words, which is perfect.
Yeah, it's completely characteristic of him to say that.
Yeah. And so that we fade away from that, but before the episode actually ends, we get some audio of Wit calling in again.
Being like, I need to talk to you. There's something I've been praying for you since I met you, and we need to have a conversation.
Yeah. Connie, Eugene, where are you? Hello? Eugene, we have to talk. It's something I've been praying about since I met you. It's very hard to explain. I'd like to talk to you about that. Hold down the fort, will you, okay?
He sounds so happy.
It is... He really does.
Yeah.
Frick, I'm getting choked up thinking
I
about
know. I am too. Laugh away the fume. Laugh away the pain. Laugh away the pain.
It is... Oh, man.
It's a lot. It's
great.
It's so good, and it's just like, so when Mr. Rogers accepted the Emmy or something, his speech was basically him going up there and being like, I could give a speech, but I'm not going to. Instead, I want us to sit in silence for a minute and think about the people that loved you into being and loved you into being who you are now, and know that when you think of them, that they're proud of you. And gosh, like, if that isn't this, like, just the idea of all of these people, like, just contemplatively, methodically, steadfast prayer is one of the most underrated things in Christianity, I think. And it's something that I have very much underappreciated in my own life, but there have been people in my life that I've had the fortune of being able to watch and benefit from that and, like, have as good role models. But, like, my mom, when I was little, and she'd pray with me before bed, she used to pray for the girl that I was going to marry. And there have been times in my life in which I thought that I had found that person, and it was so surreal that, like, oh my gosh, for literally over a decade, somebody has been praying for this to happen. And I have a good friend named Yasser, who is probably the strongest example of that in my life, in the sense that this man has had something on his heart, and he has been praying for it since he was 14, and he is 30. And it's remarkable. Like, even if it's not consistent that entire time, but just the idea that you can love somebody in that way and it can work out. And, like, prayers mean so much even when they don't come to fruition in the way that you think that they are, or that you think that they're going to.
Yeah, it is. It's a really good episode, everybody.
Yeah, give that
If you haven't picked up on it,
listen to it. Please, if you haven't for some reason, please do. It's really good. It's really powerful. And yeah, I mean, as much as it feels weird to say this, but, like, I would really like the Chalk Squad, you know, collection of us to be a community in which people feel safe being themselves and asking questions, and also bonding over shared interests, you know? Like, the idea that this could potentially mean even a fraction of what it means to us, to you guys, like, amongst each other, like, having something that you can talk about and having a community, like, I don't know. I mean, that's the goal, at least for me. You know, I love making this show, and I love it, and I really genuinely do appreciate you guys. And yeah, that's what I want. I want it to be a big kind of friendly place, friend group almost, you know. I don't know. I really appreciate this show, and I really appreciate Dylan and my ability to be able to do this and have fun and have a passion project that for some reason means something to other people too.
Oh, amen to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have any other closing thoughts, Dylan?
No, I don't think. We have really we've really hit on it all this episode. And yeah, I'm really glad that you and I got to talk about this. And that other people get to hear that. And so in the ways we normally do, but like, yeah, just feel free to reach out to us, listeners of the show, and yeah, we'll be back in a week to cover episode 331, Checkmate.
Bye, guys.
Goodbye.
Wadfam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at Wadfam Chalk Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. The Time Has Come was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Sabo and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the Wadfam Chalk Pod.